Being here. Let me thank Senators Stabenow, Merkley, and Smith for joining me. Well, we just wrapped up a great lunch to kick off our, thank you, it's usually my job, to kick off this 5-week work period. We have a lot to do, starting with Fire Grants and Safety Act, which I expect will finish and pass this week, to Julie Su's hearing to be Secretary of Labor, and tomorrow's all-senator briefing on the leaked Ukraine documents. So we're off to a busy start. But we're not just thinking about this week, we're focused on the next few. One big part will be preserving the full faith and credit of the United States, one of the most important responsibilities this Senate can ever face. It requires cooperation, it requires bipartisanship, it requires leaders who can instill confidence and calm the markets and working families alike, something House Republicans would be very wise to understand. Yesterday, Speaker McCarthy delivered a speech. He traveled all the way to New York to deliver a speech with no new substance, no new facts or details, and most importantly, no plan. I'll be blunt. If Speaker McCarthy continues in this direction, he is heading the country into default. Let me say that again. If Speaker McCarthy continues in this direction, he is heading the country into default. A first-ever default would be a nightmare for our economy and for American families who would suffer from increased costs, job losses across the board. And just as troubling, it's becoming clearer and clearer that the Speaker does not have the votes to avoid default. Meanwhile, Senate Democrats stand ready to deliver for the American people and avoid a default, while Republicans in the House and across the country are in chaos. Republicans, the self-proclaimed anti-regulation party, have sure been keen on some regulations as of late. Today, the governor of Florida is meeting with a group of hard-right GOP extremists here in D.C. As the governor comes to the nation's capital, the ink is still not dry on the bill he signed a few days ago, banning practically all abortions in Florida after 6 weeks. Idaho is now the first state to explicitly outlaw out-of-state abortions. That's sinister. Freedom of choice is not the only victim of GOP radicalism. Over 11,000 Americans have died from gun violence in the U.S. this year. What do Republicans do? Nothing, except expel state representatives who dare speak out against GOP inaction, as the Tennessee State House despicably did to 2 members of color earlier this month. Republican radicalism is even taking aim at law enforcement. A few weeks ago, President Trump called for cutting funding to the Department of Justice and the FBI because of personal grievances. And just as troubling, we still yet to hear from Speaker McCarthy or so many Republican leaders speaking up against this dangerous idea. But there's good news. The members of this chamber will have a chance to do the right thing and stand up for federal law enforcement later this week. That's because today I'll be introducing a resolution denouncing the former president's call to cut funding to our federal law enforcement. And senators will choose between standing with President Trump and his dangerous views that we ought to cut funding for law enforcement and the FBI, or they will stand with the public servants who even risk their lives to keep America safe. Do Republicans agree with President Trump that funding for federal law enforcement who guard against terrorism and CCP encroachment should be cut or eliminated? Again, this is the kind of resolution that should pass unanimously. If Senate Republicans block this provision, they'll be telling the American people that the GOP has been utterly consumed by extremism, where not women, not schools, not even federal law enforcement are safe. So I promise you this. Senate Democrats will not be dissuaded or deterred by radical Republican agenda across the country. We'll keep working for the American people, delivering results, giving families the tools, the resources they need to lead a better life. And now, Senator Stabenow, wherever she may be.
Well, thank you so much. And let me just stress again that Republicans say they will let our country default, unless they get what they want. Still trying to figure out what they want, but one thing that they talk about all the time is that they want to take food away from families and children and seniors and veterans and people with disabilities. Let me just stress that for folks in need in this country who are falling on tough times, the average SNAP amount of help is $6.10 a day. So probably a lot of folks here, I know for me, I spend more than that on a cup of coffee. $6.10 a day per person. Evidently, they think that's too much. And they also talk a lot about work requirements, and I want to say as the chair of the Agriculture, Nutrition, and Forestry Committee, newsflash, SNAP has work requirements. SNAP has work requirements. Work requirements have been in place since 1977. They were strengthened under President Clinton's welfare reform proposed in 1996. During COVID, they were suspended like other work requirements. They come back on in July. We have work requirements. Now, if you have a child under age 6, or you're a senior, or you're disabled, and so on, there are exemptions. But the reality is, the House Republicans in particular, seem to want to find ways to make it harder and harder for people just to get a little bit of help, $6.10 a day to help pay for food for their families during hard times. And let's be clear, this is a non-starter. It's also important to note, as Senator Schumer said, that President Trump and Republicans want to defund our top federal law enforcement agencies. They wanted to fund the police, to fund the top federal police agencies, law enforcement agencies. Why? Because they're upset that President Trump's finally being held accountable for his actions, I think. The Department of Justice and FBI work every day to catch dangerous criminals and to keep them off the streets. This move proposed by President Trump and the Republicans would make our communities less safe. And it's an attack on the hardworking men and women who protect us. So Republicans have an agenda, and it's not good for American families.
Senator Murphy.
Extremist Republicans are stymieing the debate over gun safety across America. 108 days into the year, 160 mass shootings, 3 9-year-olds, 3 adults in Nashville, Tennessee elementary school, shot 3 weeks ago, killed, 5 dead, 8 injured a week ago Monday at Old National Bank in Louisville, Kentucky. Just a few days passed and there was another shooting in Louisville last Saturday, 2 dead, 4 injured. The shooter shooting into a park. 4 dead, 32 injured at a Sweet 16 party in Dadeville, Alabama. It's a mass shooting every 16 hours on average across America. Robert Kennedy spoke of the mindless menace of violence that stains our land and every one of our lives. He was speaking back in 1968, but he might have been describing mass shootings in America today. Where is safe in America? Not our schools, not our churches, not our parks, not our grocery stores, not our banks, not our children's birthday parties. But extreme Republicans refuse to lift a finger to try to make things better. Lawmakers, funded by the gun lobby, throw up their hands and say nothing can be done, while they maneuver behind the scenes to make sure nothing will be done. And in Tennessee, extremist Republicans would literally rather expel their democratically elected colleagues than have a conversation about how to address gun violence. 2 legislators expelled for advocating for debate on gun safety reforms. How undemocratic is that? How extreme is that? Rather desecrate democracy than seek legislative solutions. Democracy only thrives when we have a free exchange of ideas, a free discussion of pressing issues of the day, and this is certainly one of those pressing issues. This radical Republican extremism, which chooses to tear down a democratic institution rather than deal with the real issues before us, must end.
Senator Smith.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. So this week, Republicans are launching yet another attack on women's freedom to make their own healthcare decisions without interference from politicians. This is how extreme they are. They are going after veterans now. When a veteran needs access to abortion to protect her life or her health or because she's experienced rape, these radical Republicans want to deny that person access to the medically needed care. This will literally put women's veterans in life or death situations. And this comes, of course, on the heels of the outrageous Texas court decision that would effectively ban medications. Would literally ban medication abortion over half of all abortions in this country, even in states where abortion is still legal. So this week, Americans will be able to see the clear difference between Republicans and Democrats. Democrats are fighting to protect and restore abortion rights, and Republicans are fighting to strip them away. You know, before I was in the Senate, I worked at Planned Parenthood, and I did battle with these extremist Republicans every day, and I know what this is. It is clear their determination to strip away abortion rights as a feature of their party, not a bug, but as a feature. This goal is about enacting a national ban on abortion. Republicans have confirmed these extremist activist judges. They're holding up promotions of military personnel as leverage to strip away life-saving care for service members. They are attempting to deny veterans medically necessary care, and they're doing great damage to women's health care state by state. Witness Governor DeSantis signing a 6-week abortion ban into law at 11 at night, effectively banning abortion. These extremist Republicans seem to think that they know better than women whose lives and stories they will never know. And I can tell you, for women, this is personal. And it is creating chaos for them and for their providers, and it is dangerous. And American people see it for what it is.
Thank you. 3 great speeches. Go ahead, Manu.
If Senator Feinstein is not able to return this work period, do you think she should consider resigning?
Look, I spoke to Senator Feinstein just a few days ago, and she and I are both very hopeful that she will return very soon.
And if she doesn't,
Yes. Next one.
You're hopeful. That doesn't sound like there's a plan. And would you be willing to engage in horse trading, say, over the blue slip issue to get something done if you're that bottled up and committed?
Let me first say again, I spoke to Senator Feinstein just last Friday, and she and I are very hopeful she'll return soon. As for blue slips, Senator Durbin and the Judiciary Committee are considering it. Yes.
Have you selected or thought of who you would like to replace her?
Ben Cardin. Yes.
When will you hold a vote on temporarily potentially replacing her?
This afternoon. Yes. Yes.
Earlier today, SEC Chairman Gary Gensler said that if we don't raise the debt ceiling, it's going to cause one heck of a mess in the capital markets. There's word that the House Republicans are trying to repeal the Inflation Reduction Act and the compromise in the package.
Look.
So do you find that there could be compromise? Do you know what the compromise could be?
Yeah, the compromise is very simple. It's what's been done successfully the last 3 times, twice under President Trump, once when both houses were Republican, once when one house was Republican, one Democrat, and then under Biden. And that is a bipartisan solution with no hostage-taking, no brinksmanship, and we pass a clean debt ceiling. There's certainly time to discuss budget cuts, tax increases. That's called the budget process, and it should never be attached to debt ceiling. That's dangerous. And in the direction that Speaker McCarthy is headed in could lead us into default, which would have huge damage to the American people in terms of higher costs. Prices will go up in so many different things. In terms of an economy tanking, as was said before, and in terms of lost jobs. Go ahead.
Mr. Schumer, if House Republicans are able to pass their debt limit bill that they're working on, they hope to pass it by the end of this month, does that change your position at all on...
Clean debt ceiling is the way to go.
Leader
Yes.
Schumer, do you expect to hold any votes anytime soon on legislation addressing the 6-week abortion ban in Florida or the judge's decision invalidating the FDA?
Look, this decision is an awful decision, and Democrats are looking at every way we can to limit its harmful, terrible effects on women. Yes.
The House tomorrow is going to pass a bill that would overturn local D.C. laws similar to the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act. Do you want to see that bill come up for a vote in the Senate, or are you going to try to block it?
Well, we can't block it. They would have a right to bring it up. But this bill, which the President has already said he's vetoed, has some very reasonable reforms. It does not go as far as the George Floyd bill does, and I expect we'll be able to block it.
Leader Schumer,
Thank you, everybody.